chapter. So what's the subject we've been talking about? It's gone on for several sessions. Subject is liberation. Liberation means freedom. Freedom from what?
From death and birth. Birth and death.
Yeah. So what do we want to get? What do we want to get free from? That means the miseries of material life, which is Krishna explains later on in the 8th chapter. We can quickly look at that because that's very relevant to this about what we want to get liberated from. So this is the 8th chapter, text number 16. 8th chapter 16.
Yeah. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest are all places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attained to my abode, O son of Kunti, never take birth again.
So when we say material life is miserable, we want to get free from that. That doesn't just mean this planet. It means every planet, even in the heavenly planets, the higher planets, even where the demigods live, where the sages live, or what to speak of the lower planets. They're all places of misery. And the basic miseries, of course, are birth and death, and in between that's old age and disease. And the previous verse to that, text 15, Krishna makes a black and white statement. Who wants to read that? Bob, you want to read that? The previous verse to that one, 15.
Yeah. Okay, so am I right saying after attaining?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection.
Yeah, so Krishna declares it himself. That's coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Dukkha layam. Dukkha. We have our up-and-coming Sanskrit scholar, Josh, there. What does dukkha mean?
Unhappy.
Yeah, unhappiness. He said it in a very nice way. It means misery, suffering. But yeah, unhappiness is a nice way of saying it. Yeah, of unhappiness. And happiness is sukha. So sukha and dukkha. Or in Hindi, they say sukh dukh. Isn't it, Gulshan? Sukh dukh.
Absolutely. It says Vidyalaya and Dukhalaya. Vidyalaya means like a school, and Dukhalaya means, the misery life.
Yeah. So alaya means like place or house. Alaya. It means like house or a place. So it's a place of unhappiness or a place of miseries, material world. So any sane person, anyone that's a little bit conscious, a little bit intelligent, should naturally want to get free from suffering. Put up your hand if you like suffering. No one likes suffering. We like happiness. So definitely it's only the right thing to do.
Kunti likes suffering. She said, keep me in the suffering.
That's for another reason. That's because in the suffering condition, they were praying to the Lord, depending on the Lord. So the Lord was always there to help them out of that condition. And as soon as the misery went away, Krishna said, see you later. Yeah. So she thought, that's not very good. Better we have the miseries back.
Keep me in misery, at least I'll remember you.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a different scenario.
Yeah. We're not on that level.
Not on that level. But so it's only natural one wants to get free from suffering. Of course, materialistic people try to do that too. But their solution to getting free from suffering is not by getting out of the material world. Their idea of getting free from suffering is what? That's not a trick question. Well, what do materialistic people do to try to deal with the suffering of life?
More money.
Yeah. The idea is that the materialistic person wants to stay in the material world, but they think that they have the ability to counteract the miseries. That they can counteract the miseries. Through what? How do we try to counteract suffering?
Self-medication.
Yeah, medication. Yep.
Um,
Medication.
Wealth.
Yeah, through using money to think we can counteract the suffering with money. If we have more money, the misery will go away. Yeah. How about intoxication? Just cover it over. Just
Well,
forget about.
That was part of self-medication.
Oh, yes. That was self-medication was a nice way of saying
Yeah.
getting intoxicated. Yeah. Yeah. But things like we've got a whole medical industry, right, for dealing with disease. There's diseases there, which is a suffering, and we think we can deal with that through medicine. And of course, people try, but ultimately we're not successful. Even if you do deal with one disease, another disease will come. You can't stop disease.
Maybe like a temporary relief, but not the permanent.
Yeah, otherwise with all this modern technology and medical system, the hospital should be getting less and less full, right? They should be becoming more and more empty. Is that the case?
Yeah, true.
Hospitals should be getting smaller if we're dealing with disease, right? There should be fewer hospitals and they should be getting smaller. But one thing I notice, if you ever go to a city, the biggest building in the city generally is the hospital.
It's 5-star hospital. In India, there is a star rating as well. What sort of hospital
really?
you want to go? 5-star, 3 stars? Yeah.
Yeah. So, we try to counteract these things, but they don't go away. You try to counteract it. Often what happens, if you try to counteract one particular problem or suffering, what do you end up doing?
End up getting something else in there because...
Yeah, well, you might try to solve one problem, but you end up creating 5 more.
Yeah, because side effect of whatever the drugs we're taking.
Yeah, you just get more entangled in material life and you end up suffering more. Like, I'll give you an example. That previously people used to get from A to B how?
Walk.
Would walk. And that's a bit of suffering, because you might get sore legs.
Yeah. Sweaty.
And aching joints and legs and stuff. So some bright sparks are thinking, oh, this is miserable having to walk so far. Well, there must be a faster way, a better way of getting from A to B. I know, we'll create a car. We'll get around on 4 wheels. So, or 2 wheels or 4 wheels. So they created the car, Mr. Henry Ford and so forth. And then, we solve the suffering of our legs having to walk, but has that stopped the suffering?
No, but we create the pollution.
Now we've created how many problems? We had one problem before, sore legs. Now we've got pollution.
Lungs.
We could talk for ages about this. So many, a carbon monoxide poisoning,
flat tires, accidents,
death and broken bones and
it takes you a good chunk of your income too.
Yeah, a good chunk of your income, and then not only buying it, but then maintaining it. The stupid vehicle breaks down and you have to fix it, and you're wasting time in the mechanic. And then there's the wonderful traffic jams. Everyone ever heard of a traffic jam before?
Oh yeah.
Today was a lot, actually.
In many cities, and this is not a joke, in many cities you could get from A to B faster by walking than you could in the car. Because when you get stuck in the traffic jam, you know what the speed is?
0.
10 kilometers.
At least it's like, 5 miles an hour if you walk, but it's 0 miles an hour in the traffic jam. So we've actually created more problems. There was less problem before, and we've just complicated our life and made more problems. So, but the materialistic person, they also want to get liberated or free from suffering. But their idea is they want to stay in the material world and just make the material world a better place. But according to Krishna, that's not possible. The Krishna said this 5,000 years ago, and he said this is Dukkhalayam, a place of misery. What to speak of now? So it was in the past, it is in the present, it will be in the future. It's a place of misery. That's the way it's set up. And you can't change that program. That's the way the material is set up. Of course, you can make the material life a little bit more sane, or you can make it more insane. So there is a little bit of movement there. I'll give you an example. If you live in the mode of goodness, sattva guna, if you live in the mode of goodness, then there's going to be less suffering in the material world, right? What does it mean to live in the mode of goodness? It means like not eating meat and being vegetarian, and even better than that, offering your food to the Supreme in sacrifice, and then not taking intoxication, not having illicit sex, and not gambling. By avoiding bad karma, then there's going to be more happiness and less suffering. So there is some ways you can tweak it a bit, but still, even if you live in the mode of goodness, you still have to grow old, and you still have to get sick, and you still have to die. So you're not going to change that, but you are going to create a little bit more auspiciousness around you, happiness around you. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, but not much. The basic miseries, no one can change that. So therefore, the real solution, not to try to counteract them, which is impossible, but to try to get out of the material world completely and don't come back. Get out of here and then don't come back. And Krishna often says that at the end of a verse, that once one returns to my abode, then they never return. We just read that, right? In that 8th chapter verse. And he said that after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So why would you want to come back to a miserable place if you're in an enjoyable place, if you're in an eternal atmosphere? Sukhalayam. If you're in a place full of happiness, why would you want to leave that and come back to a place of misery? So that's the situation. Once one goes back to the spiritual world, which is called Vaikuntha, then one generally, almost always, never comes back to the material world. So then the question is, well, how did we come to the material then? Why did we come here? Because before you've come here for the first time, after you've had the experience, of course, you wouldn't want to come back. But the very first time, we have that strong hope that we can find happiness separate from the Supreme. Of course, that's an illusion, and we find that out when we come here. We find that out often, isn't it?
I think at the time of the death, if you have any desire, you have to come back to fulfill that.
Of course.
So we must be desire something like that, what we're having now in the past life.
Yeah. No, that's there. No, reincarnation. That's why we reincarnate, because we still have desires. But I'm saying, once we go back to the spiritual world, then it's so much happiness there. And why would we want to come back to the material world? I'm not talking about someone who's dying and then they have desires, and because of those desires they take birth again. That's another thing. But once we go back to the spiritual world, it's so much better. Then why would we want to come back? But for the very first time, when you've been in the spiritual world and you've never been in the material world, you don't know that it's a miserable place, and you have a desire to imitate Krishna and be the supreme enjoyer and controller and everything. So therefore you come to the material world, because you've never had a previous experience. So the soul can come to the material world the very first time like that. But once we go back, then generally you don't go back to the...
Do the demigod ever been to the material world or no?
Demigods mean they're in the material world. They're just in the higher planets in the material world. Heaven is still in the material world.
Okay.
It's not in the spiritual world. Heaven means like Swargaloka. Swargaloka means...
Yes.
That's in the material world. It's a higher planet. But what did Krishna just say? From the topmost planet, which is called Brahmaloka, to the lowest planet, which is Patalaloka, they're all miserable places. So even in the higher planets, the heavenly places and so forth, they're miserable places too. So yeah, we've been talking about liberation. So it's been telling us about the symptoms of someone who's liberated. So why is that relevant to be conscious of, to know the characteristics or the symptoms of someone that's going to be eligible to be liberated? So a liberated person means that when their body dies, they're going to go to the spiritual world. They're going to go to Vaikuntha, and they're not going to come back. So they're liberated. And also, If they're engaged in devotional service and bhakti yoga, they're already liberated even before they die. So there's two things you could look at there, that when they die, they're going to go back to the spiritual world. That's a liberated person. And also that they're liberated right now if they're engaged in bhakti. They're serving the Lord. Means that's our normal condition. The soul's doing its normal function, its dharma. It's already doing its dharma. The soul's natural characteristic is to serve the Supreme. And as soon as you're doing that, even in the material world, you're liberated. You're liberated. And in due course of time, the body will die and you're going to go back to the spiritual world. But you're already effectively in the spiritual world, because that's what do they do in the spiritual world? They do bhakti. That's all they do in the spiritual world. And they're fully happy doing that. It means they're hearing about the Supreme, they're glorifying the Supreme, chanting the Supreme's names, they're remembering the Supreme, they're offering prayers and worshipping and so forth, 9 processes of bhakti. So that's going on very spontaneously, very naturally in the spiritual world. And that can be done in the material world too. And if you do that in the material world, you're as good as in the spiritual world. And Prabhupada said that many times. Like he went to Los Angeles temple. He said in the class, we are not in Los Angeles. We are, what did he say? We are where? You can go to that temple. It's called Watseka Avenue, the name of the street. The temple's in Watseka Avenue. It's there today after 50 years nearly. So he said to everyone there in Los Angeles, we are not in Los Angeles. We are in Vaikuntha. We're in the spiritual world. We're in the spiritual world because they're serving the Supreme. They're fully absorbed. They're like in samadhi. They're in samadhi. They're fully absorbed, and their consciousness, their mind is fully absorbed in the Supreme. Mm-hmm. So in that way, they're already liberated, and it's just a matter of time before the body dies and they achieve the spiritual existence as well. Mm. So what's the idea? Why do we want to hear about all these characteristics and symptoms of a liberated person? What's the benefit? Because there's got to be some benefit, right? Because who wants to do anything? Put your hand up if you want to do things that don't give you any benefit. So no, of course not. We only want to spend our time doing things that are going to give us some good results and benefit. So what's the benefit of hearing about the symptoms or qualities of a liberated person?
It's a journey towards Vaikuntha.
Journey for who?
Ours, whatever we're listening.
Ours, okay. How does that? How does the hearing about these qualities and characteristics of a liberated person help us?
You can get in spirituality, and then as Prabhupada said that you're not in Los Angeles, you're in Vaikuntha. So we are in Vaikuntha.
Okay.
It helps you spot them.
Pardon?
Helps you identify them in your life.
Yeah, we should identify them in our own life. We should identify, okay, I'm doing that. I'm doing that one. Like one said, neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant. Okay, I'm doing that. But then I look at the next one, nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant. Oh, I'm not very good at that one. So I got to work on that. So, so you see the divine qualities that you're doing currently. And that's, you're on the right path there. And then there may be some of these characteristics you're not really there yet. You may be on the way, but you're not there yet. But if you know what they are, then you should try to cultivate them in your own life. That's the idea.
But you also can be identified in other people. Like you might go to the bhakti tree, and you might observe someone's behavior and go, "Whoa, this guy is behaving according to the passage of chapter 4 in Bhagavad Gita."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's rare to see at the bhakti tree, but
you can see all the time. I'm there.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, Josh, because that's what it was coming to my mind to talk about next, was as also you can identify those qualities in others. And then if you see it in others, then we should, if we're smart, we should try to associate more with them than those that are not having liberated qualities. We should try to associate more with those that are having the liberated qualities, with the idea that it might rub off, that those qualities might rub off on us, due to association. And that in Sanskrit's called satsanga, very important words. Satsanga, you might hear that sometimes. People talk about, we're going to a satsanga tonight, or a sadhu sangha. So these are two alternate words. But sangha means association, sangha, association. And sat means eternal, or those that are on the path of the eternal, which is devotees of the Lord. And sadhu means a saintly person that have good qualities. So we should a very important principle of achieving liberation is we need to associate with liberated persons as much as possible. And then that will help us probably more than any other single thing that we can do. That when you see them acting transcendentally, spiritually, that gives us a good example and something we can follow and imitate, and encouraging for us and give us more enthusiasm.
Hey, Abhay.
Yeah.
What about the idea also of keeping, not keeping an eye on each other, but helping, helping each other not fall?
Yeah, that's very important. And that's another very important aspect in a liberated person is compassion. So that, being kind and caring for others and reaching out and trying to help others come up, and materialistic consciousness is a lot of envy. You push people down, but in spiritual life's the opposite to that. You want to try to lift others up. But the thing is, how can you lift someone up if you're down? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can you pull someone out of the ocean that's drowning in the ocean if you're also in the ocean? If you want to get someone out of the ocean, what's the first thing you have to do?
You must be in the boat.
You have to be in the boat.
Yes.
You have to be in the boat. If you're also drowning, you can't help someone else that's drowning. Like they say in the planes, right? They say, first of all, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself and then your kid. Because if you don't have it on yourself, even though you love your kid, you'll be dead before you can put it around them. So you'll be unconscious, and you're not going to help anybody. So that's very important. We should follow the process ourselves and get lifted up and become in a liberated state. And that's with the help of persons that are already liberated, and then try to help lift others up. That's very important. Don't think that, I'm liberated, that's it, I finished, my journey's over, that's all I have to do, I'm going back to bed now, I'm liberated. No, then that's when it begins. Then your only purpose left is when you're liberated, what's your only purpose left? When you're liberated, you don't really have anything else you have to do. You're going to get completely free from suffering, go back to the spiritual world whenever the body dies, whenever that is. But there is one.
You can't lift others.
Yeah, that's the only purpose left. Once we become liberated, the only purpose left is to try to help others. And we see persons like Prabhupada and great souls, in different traditions, Jesus or Buddha or whoever, they're always, sannyasis or whatever. They're always trying to help others. They're 24/7. They're doing that. They're always trying to help others. And that's natural. And that compassion naturally wells up in the heart of a liberated person. If that doesn't well up in the heart, it means our heart is still quite hard. We're not really liberated yet. If we don't really care about others, if we just care about ourselves, in one sense, even thinking about your own liberation, that can be a kind of selfishness also, a spiritual selfishness. That's the only thing I care about. I'm going to get my own backside out of this miserable world. I don't give a stuff about you guys. So that's also a kind of, and Krishna's not so happy with that attitude, that all you care about is your own liberation. He's more pleased when of course, when you're on the path of liberation, but then you try to help others as well. That's very pleasing. That's very pleasing. Dayayash Sarvabhutesu, merciful to all living entities. So this is one thing that pleases the Lord very much. It's said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Dayayash Sarvabhutesu, Santustya Yanikainava, Savendriya Pasantacha, Tusyatcha Achu Janardana. That Janardana, another name of Krishna, is very satisfied, Tusyatcha, by three things. Three things really please Krishna. If he sees that you've got these three things, you're home and hosed. That you're Daya, you're merciful to all the living entities. And Santustya means satisfied by whatever you get, whatever comes easily to you in your life without great endeavor. You're just satisfied with that. You're not over endeavoring for material things. You're just satisfied with what comes easily without too hard endeavor. And Savendriyo Pasantyacha, that you're controlling your senses, controlling the mind and senses. So those three things particularly, they satisfy the Lord very much if he sees you have these qualities. So definitely what Josh is saying is so true. You know, we should try to help others up for sure. But very important, we have to help ourselves up, follow that process, you know, at least side by side, if not beforehand, but side by side. You know, helping others, we have to help ourselves up by following the process very strictly ourselves. So yeah, we want to try to develop these liberated qualities ourselves, and then we want to identify it in others and then associate with them. And if we are going to associate with people that are not liberated, which is highly likely because it's very rare to find a liberated person. So if you are going to associate with non-liberated persons that may have a lot of bad qualities, then what do you have to try to be careful about, and what do you want to try to do in that kind of relationship where you're associating with people that maybe have the qualities of the mode of ignorance or the mode of passion? Like, for example, giving specific examples, lust is in the mode of passion, greed is in the mode of passion, anger is in the mode of ignorance, envy like that in the mode of ignorance, so pride in the mode of passion. So if you associate with people that have these lower qualities in the lower mode, then what should the relationship be like? We don't want to take on what it should be like. We don't want to take on their qualities. We don't want to absorb or take on their qualities, but we want to give them the opportunity to get some divine qualities. It means we want to try to lift them up. We don't want to get pulled down by them. We want to be very careful not to get pulled down by others' association, but we should just reach out to others to help them up, to give them Krishna. To give them Krishna and not to take whatever they have, whether it's lust or greed or anger or so forth. We want to be very careful about that, because there's a lot of, I don't know about say a lot, but there are definitely some transcendentalists that fell away from the spiritual path because they had bad association, and that's called asatsanga. Asatsanga. So bad association. Some transcendentalists have fallen down, you know, as we say, have blooped or fallen down because of bad association. So we naturally have to associate with all kinds of people, but we should try to give them good association, help them come up, and not be attracted to their qualities. If we're attracted by their qualities, that's unhealthy. That's going to be a very unhealthy relationship. Anyone like to say anything about that? Okay.
Hey, one more thing. Sorry. What about? Sometimes I find, we all probably have experienced times in our life when we don't have anyone good to associate with, where, you know, we find that all of our peers, all of our associates, you know, are not as inclined along this path as we want.
Yeah.
But even when we do have choices and we do have options, what about the notion of spending time in isolation? And no matter who the person is, sometimes I feel like I get so much spiritual exaltation and remembrance when I simply remove myself from the city and go into the country, you know, for 24 hours. Yeah.
Now that's a very interesting subject, and that's the actual reason why you'll hear about in a lot of these old scriptures, particularly, which is going back to very ancient histories, where the saintly people, the trend was to go to the forest. So why were the saintly, you know, persons interested in liberation, they always heading to the forest? What's the benefit of going to the forest? It was simply not just that because the trees look nice and you know, the sound of the water, and you can have a good swim, and there's nuts and berries are very tasty or whatever. Not just that. I mean, all those things are there, of course, but because there's no materialistic people there. Materialistic people, you won't find them in the forest generally. They're all clump in the cities after the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And
So then,
you know,
then
with
they can't lift the others.
Huh?
They just benefit themselves only. Then they can't lift others.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's there. But like I said, you got to help yourself first before you can help anyone else. So if you just get victimized in the city life and go down the Googler, down the plug hole, then what's the point of that? Better you get out of there and, you know, at least get some peace of mind and you can think clearly. So that was the idea why in olden times the transcendentalists mainly would go to the forest to avoid, mainly for that reason, to avoid bad association, because generally, like I said, materialistic people are not hanging out in the forest, so they would live a very solitary life. I mean, we can read that. It's mentioned in one of the in the process of knowledge, in the 13th chapter, text 8 to 12. We can look at that 13th chapter, 8 to 12.
Oh, it's a big one.
This is a big one. So
I
if
think
you look at
the biggest in Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, so it's one of the biggest, 5 verses altogether. So in the 4th verse, the second line of the 4th verse, Vivikta dasa savat vam. Viviktas dasa savat vam, which if you look in the word for word, Vivikta. Solitary. Yeah, so
Vivek is come from Vivek.
Okay. Vivikta means solitary. Desha means place. Savat vam, aspiring. So this is knowledge according to Krishna. Knowledge means that we should have some desire or interest or aspire to live in a very quiet, peaceful place. In a very quiet, peaceful place, because that is conducive to our spiritual life, because there won't be materialistic people around us, you know, that are having midnight parties, and you know, you won't smell the barbecue, the Barbie coming wafting across, you know, and you know, you won't be seeing half naked people, and you know, you won't be hearing F this and, you know, bloody this and everything. You won't hear any bad language and see bad things and smell bad things. And so for that reason, Krishna's saying that's what real knowledge is, understanding that we should want to live away from materialistic people. And then that's very healthy for our own spiritual development. And then from that, you know, solitude, then we can go out with a lot of spiritual strength. We can, when you're spiritually strong, then you can reach out and help other people. But if you live amongst all that, there is a risk, there is a danger that slowly you get dragged down by that energy around you, and you can become weaker and weaker, and then how are you going to help anyone? So that's one thing there. But Prabhupada, interestingly, where it mentions in the scriptures that one should go and live in the forest, Prabhupada translates that in Kali Yuga, with the equivalent of going to the forest, which would have been in Satya Yuga or Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga in the previous ages, going to the forest, you could the equivalent of that now, and with the same benefit in Kali Yuga, would be to go in the temple, to live in proximity to a temple, because that also, in a temple environment, you don't have materialistic people around you. It's a very peaceful place. And spiritual minded people go there, not generally materialistic people don't go, and so that would be an equivalent. So it's not that everyone has to pack up their bobs. Okay, Bob, tomorrow you have to pack up your bags and go to the forest, to the, what is it, the Wattagans?
Yep.
To the Blue Mountains. So
and then we'll get the news one old man had been lost in the forest. And then the whole SAS crew was trying to find him.
Yeah. So it's not actually recommended in Kali Yuga to literally do that, go to the forest. Although some people still do, like the Himalayas is still popular.
And plus, you do have some responsibility. If you have got a wife and kids, you can't just leave behind and go to the Mount Everest.
Of course. So that's definitely a factor there. But even if someone was retiring.
But remember that it's not that you have only two options. One is to never go to the forest, and the other is to abandon your family and go to the forest. Those are not the only two options.
Yep.
We can. If anyone has not been for 24 hours in isolation in a natural setting for a while, I recommend that you do it.
Yeah.
24 hours, just one night.
Yeah.
And everyone can arrange that in their life to be alone for hours in nature. Very, very, very auspicious.
Yeah. So what Josh is saying is a very good practical solution. That just spend some time in solitude and really use that opportunity, which free from distractions that materialistic people put upon us and disturbances. That mind can be peaceful and you can focus more deeply on your
almost like what happens is, for me, what happens is, like, I can be in my home in a quiet, lovely place in the city, and I can be reading the scriptures every day, and I can be doing the chanting every day, but there's something still, like, if I then drive out to Gloucester, and as soon as the mountains part and the trees swallow me up and the mobile phone reception falls away, suddenly everything that I've read in the last month flooding into my consciousness.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. A natural environment is the mode of goodness, and mode of goodness is the most suitable environment for our spiritual practice. I mean, the city is explained to be in the mode of passion. So mode of passion is so many desires bombarding us, agitation like that, desires, passion, whereas the country is more in the mode of goodness. And mode of ignorance, if you go even deeper within the city into the casino or the brothel like that, then that's mode of ignorance. That's just absolutely terrible for any kind of spiritual elevation. So there's definitely different environments affect us differently. So if we are sincere in our spiritual practice, we should definitely try to surround ourselves as much as possible with an environment that's conducive for our spiritual progress. But even in our own home, you can create a temple-like environment too. Even in your own home, you can create a temple-like environment to some degree, like that. Having nice smells there, incense or fragrances like that. Grow flowers in your garden, like I'm growing roses and jasmines and gardenias and different things like that. And smell these fragrant flowers every day and put nice pictures around on the wall of nature and and spiritual related pictures and things like that, and playing nice bhajans and kirtans and music and things like that, soothing sounds and like that. So you can try to create that atmosphere around you, and play, and do have kirtans going on, play mridanga and kartals, and have the harmonium and play the instruments and chant, and like that. You can create a more sanctified atmosphere too. So there's a whole range of different things you can do. And then Prabhupada actually wanted the devotees to every year go to Mayapur, which is the very holy place in India where Lord Chaitanya appeared 500 years ago. And that's an amazing place, So Prabhupada wanted the devotees to go there every year because he knew that in the West we can get contaminated by Maya, all materialistic influences like that, and slowly get worn down a bit. So he thought every year, have a real spiritual booster, a real spiritual immunization, and just a real shot in the arm, and just really intensive for whatever, a couple weeks, a few weeks, really intensive, good association, lots of hearing and chanting. So that's another thing too. You can have intensive periods to give us a real boost, and that'll keep us going for the rest of the year. Things like that. Of course, during COVID lockdowns and that, we can't go anywhere outside, so we have to.
But we can go to Gloucester. We can go to Gloucester.
Go to Gloucester, yeah.
Oh yes, Barrington Tops.
Yeah.
Similar to the volcanoes in Bali, and similar to the Himalayas.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're sincere in our spiritual quest, we'll find a way. We'll find a way to and do whatever needs to be done to make progress.
Bob, I know you agree with me.
Gloucester?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful place.
Anyway, I'll stop trying to dominate.
No, that's very interesting. Very, very relevant, very important.
Honestly, it's just that it's been so. I can isolate myself in the city as much as I want.
Yeah.
I'm quite lucky. I have a beautiful home. It looks out over the city. There's trees. There's birds. I live just with my girlfriend. Very, very nice and peaceful existence, and I can do as much spiritual practice as I want. And yet, still, the benefit of going away for 24 hours every now and then, it's just I can't deny it. It's profound.
That 24 hours you don't have a mobile with you, no social media?
I have it with me.
But if it rings or anything, you still answer. So you are connected.
Yeah. It depends on what my responsibilities are on that day. If I know that I need to be contactable, then I will just be contactable. But if I know that I can get away with it, then I won't. But yeah.
I've been to have you been to Mangrove Valley, Mangrove Mountain?
Yeah.
Yeah, in that one, there's mobile doesn't work when you go in that valley.
Right. No,
that's beautiful. Right. Even mobile doesn't work. So great. I was there 3 days. That's beautiful. Nobody can ring you. There's a one phone in the office there when you're booking there, and then nobody locked the room. So you just live in the room, leave the stuff in there. They do havan and everything. Beautiful near the creek. Anyway.
That's the idea. Just an environment where there's less distractions, things that take our mind away from what we're trying to focus on, which is our spiritual progress, focus on Krishna. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so the verse of today is text 22 and the 5th chapter. We can read the Sanskrit too, and then the English. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga.
Yehi samsparshaja bhoga.
Dukha yonaya evate.
Dukha yona evate.
Adyantavanta kunteya.
Adyantavanta kunteya.
Nateshu ramate buddha.
Nateshu ramate buddha.
Anyone else like to have a go at leading? Okay, let's read the English. Kulshan?
An intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery, which are due to contact with the material sense. O son of Kunti, such pleasure has a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them.
Okay, what sets a human being apart from any other species?
Common sense. Intelligence.
Intelligence, yes, intelligence. We have a more higher developed intelligence. Whether we're going to use it or not, it's another thing. A lot of
They
people
can use it for the material purpose.
Yeah, so that's called duskritany, which means, misusing the intelligence for bad purposes. You have some good merit, but you're misusing that merit.
I reckon you have to use intelligence in everything, whether you study or invention or even farming or anything.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it took one good example, it took a lot of intelligence to create a nuclear bomb, the atomic bomb. It took a lot of intelligence, but that's a misuse.
Yes.
That's a very bad use of intelligence. But definitely, there's no question that without intelligence, how you're going to make something like that, or like we said, cars and so forth. But that's a misuse of intelligence. Our intelligence actually is meant for this: how to get free from misery, to understand what the source of misery is and avoid it. And what is it? What is the source of misery? According to this verse, where is misery coming from?
Do you mean the material world or lust?
Yeah, yep. So lust is
the pairs of opposites.
Pardon?
From the pairs of opposites, the Dvandva.
Dvandva, dualities. Yep. And those dualities are experienced, as explained here, in contact with the material senses. So what is the senses? The eyes and the nose and the ears and tongue having contact with these sense objects. So the senses are called indriya in Sanskrit. Indriya is the senses, and the object of the senses is called the visaya. So, like the eyes are contacting with what? Contacting with form, some form, like a beautiful woman, a handsome man. We're seeing something with our eyes, something with a form. Our nose, that is the indriya, nose is contacting the visaya, is the fragrance, the smell, like that. So there's a connection there. The contact is between the senses and the sense objects. So every sense has an object that it's attracted to. So that's where the misery comes, due to this process of the senses interacting with the sense objects. And that generally is known as, and Prabhupada says this many times in the book, sense gratification. So what is sense gratification? This is the process of the senses interacting with the sense objects. And naturally we might say, well, what's miserable about that? But that's how we get entangled in the material world, is through the senses, and what are we trying to do with the sense objects? We want to enjoy the sense object. And that's where Josh is saying about duality, that our desire, of course, is to enjoy the sense object, but often we get the opposite result, which is what he's saying. We can often get an opposite result to what we want, and that's suffering. Like, for example, generally every man and woman are attracted to each other. The senses of the sense object. The woman is the sense object for the man, and the man is the sense object for the woman, for their senses. And they think, we're going to get together and we're going to enjoy our senses. But often what happens is an opposite result. which is like divorce, right? Divorce, So no one had that idea in the beginning that this is going to end up as suffering. And no one definitely, why would we start that relationship if we thought it was going to end up in suffering? But ultimately, that's often the case, that these interactions between the senses and the sense objects, they often result in suffering. In that case, the man and the woman, it can end up in, it starts off, I love you, and may end, I hate you, I never want to see you again. So sometimes, I'm not saying it's always the case, but many times like that. Or like example, with the tongue. How does the tongue relating with food?
Bob Smile says that, been there, done that.
The tongue. So just like, the tongue is attracted to tasting nice food. That's the object. The food is the object for the tongue. But through that attraction is leading to misery. How? That if we're eating some dead animals and so forth like that, then we have to suffer so much bad karma. We have to take birth as those animals that we've been involved in killing, and they take birth in a form to kill us. So like that, there's that picture there of the man with the head of the cow and the cow with the head of a man. So the idea is that now I'm killing the cow to enjoy my senses, my tongue, and in future that cow will take birth as a human and I will take birth as a cow, and it will kill me. So that's obviously miserable. To take birth again, of course, is miserable. And then what to speak of taking birth as a cow and end up in a slaughterhouse and have your head chopped off or a bullet put in your head is miserable. So that's how the sense gratification process can end up in misery. That we're trying to enjoy this through the senses, but often we get the opposite result. And we get entangled in the cycle of birth and death and reincarnation and karma because of this process. We want to enjoy money, but that to get that money, we may tell so many lies or cheat people like that. And because of that, we might steal from people and take more than what we deserve. So we have to take birth again because of that. And we have to pay back those debts. Say this life, I steal $1,000 from Gulshan. Do you know what will happen?
And you're going to pay me back 10,000 in next life.
I can go to the casino. I can go to Gloria Jean's and buy lots of coffee, like that. So, but what's the problem with that?
You got to pay me back next life $10,000.
Yeah, I have to take birth again to pay Gulshan back with interest. Did you know?
Yeah.
Not only you have to pay the $1,000 back from this life, but you have to pay with interest.
Who will decide the interest rate? Krishna?
I don't know. Krishna's team, the demigods. There's one demigod that's in charge of calculating the interest rates. Yeah, I'm not sure how much it will be, but it definitely have to pay back more. And it goes the other way too. If you give in charity, like to a saintly person, like a brahmana, depending on how elevated the brahmana is, it can come back double in the next life. If you could take birth again, you'll get back double what you gave.
Sometimes becomes the same life.
Or, yeah, that may be there too. And, or even, instead of even a more higher brahmana, 100 times back, 1,000 times back, or unlimitedly back. Like if you give to a self-realized person like Prabhupada, if you give to called a Jivan Mukta, completely liberated soul, if you give in charity to them, you get back unlimitedly in your next life, unlimitedly. Definitely. So, yeah, so we have to be very careful. If we act in sense gratification, we can get completely entangled more in misery. Or if we follow the spiritual injunctions in the scriptures and act in a devotional, divine way, that will help to liberate us, help to free us. So we have to be very careful how we use the senses. If you use the senses in devotional service, that will liberate you. But if you use your senses for sense gratification, for your own pleasure, then you get bound up. So do you get that? If you use your senses for Krishna's pleasure, you get liberated. Same senses. If you use your senses for your pleasure, you get bound up in a miserable life. So it's not that, okay, the source of misery is my senses. I'm not going to use my senses anymore. Some people try that. That's called the path of jnana, the path jnana yoga. They try to reduce the interaction of the senses with the sense objects, and they just get more into philosophy and not into activity. They stop karma, activity. But that's not a very practical solution, because one thing is, how are you going to live? How are you going to live if you don't use your senses? Even if you don't use your senses, your health's not going to be very good. And if you don't move your senses, if you don't interact with the world with your senses, your health's not going to be very good. How are you going to pay the bills if you don't do anything with your senses? So that's not a very... And also, it's not only the nature of the senses, but it's the nature of the soul to be active. You know, why is the body so active? Do you know why the body is always active? Even at night, right? When the body is shut down, but your mind is active. So the body is active during the day, and at night your mind is active. So why is the body so active? Why is the mind so active?
Again, it'd be related to the senses.
But what is the body means senses. The body's made up of senses. But what is the body made of? What is the senses made of?
Material.
Yeah, matter.
Yeah.
Matter. And how much activity does matter have? Like your house is made of matter, right? The chair that you're sitting on is made of matter. You know, how much activity does that have? Your bricks, your wood.
Not a lot.
Not a lot, yeah. So the activity is actually because the soul is inside. So actually the soul is active. Because the soul is so active, when it enters into the matter, when the soul enters into this material body, it becomes active. When the soul leaves this material body, what happens to the activities of the body?
This body has become a dead body.
Yeah, nothing.
Longer active.
But then one more thing, it's like when the soul leaves the body, is a dead body, and that body can't eat, can't drink, can't nothing.
Yeah.
When the soul in the body,
Yeah.
and then you can eat, drink, and all that. So who's enjoying that, soul or body?
No, the body is not. I mean, the body needs those things, but it's not enjoying it. I mean,
But
matter
like
is
soul is enjoying that.
No, the mind.
But if the soul leaves the body, they can't enjoy anything at all. But if the soul, as long as soul's there,
No. The soul doesn't need the body to enjoy. The soul enjoys more out of the body.
so but body can't enjoy by itself without soul.
Correct. But
So who's enjoying?
Yeah, in the body, who's enjoying is the sense gratification. Who's enjoying the sense gratification, the senses and the sense objects? That's the mind. So it's all on the mental platform.
But mind as well work there as long as soul's there. If soul's not there, mind's not gonna work.
Correct, but that mind is the via medium, is the interface between matter and spirit is the mind and ego, false ego, the ahankar. The mana and the ahankar is the interface between the material world and the soul. So the mind is what is experiencing the pleasure and the pain, like Josh was saying about the dvandva, the dualities.
But
so that the happiness
will only
and the
will pleasure that as long as soul's there. If soul leaves, mind cannot pleasure anything.
Correct.
The souls play the part.
The soul, until we awaken to our real consciousness, our spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, until we awaken, then the soul is like in a sleeping state. Therefore, it said that the soul is in nidra. The soul is like in a nidra condition, sleeping state. When we're in maya, an illusion, it's just mainly the mind and the false ego that's experiencing all these different things, and the mind is just a passenger in the whole show, and in a dormant kind of sleeping condition.
So the awakening soul is the Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago.
Jago, yeah.
Yeah, wake up,
Soul.
sleeping soul.
Wake up basically
Wake
is
up.
not wake up that for Mangalarti, wake up from the
Maya, from
Maya.
illusion. Yeah, from ignorance. So the main thing experiencing in the material world is the mind. That's where the experiences are taking place. You know, the suffering is in the mind, the pleasure is in the mind, like that. So the yogi learns to control the mind. So therefore, that experience of going on highs and then lows has become more equalized. You can equalize that if one controls the mind, and one always becomes happy when, as these verses are saying, looking inwardly for happiness. That's the happiness for the soul. It means inwardly for happiness means in reconnecting with the Supreme. That's our real happiness for the soul. Is in that relationship between the Atma and the Paramatma, between the soul and the Supreme Soul. That's what it means to look inwardly, to get pleasure from within. We just read that verse, to get pleasure from within. So that means if that pleasure is in our relationship with the Supreme, and that's the real pleasure for the soul. The soul can't get any pleasure out of materialistic life, not possible. Like we said in the last talk, we're like fish out of water here. If you take the fish out of the water, the fish can't enjoy anything because that's not its real environment. It's not its natural environment. Doesn't matter. You give it the fridge, the TV, the latest mobile, nice food, restaurant food, everything like that. The fish cannot enjoy anything because its real environment is in the water. So we belong in the spiritual realm, in the Satchitananda world. We can't enjoy in this Asat Achit Nirananda world, which means it's temporary, full of ignorance and suffering. This is not our real life. We can't enjoy, the soul can't enjoy anything here. It's just the mind where it's all taking place. But while we're in the material world, we want to reconnect. That's yoga, to a union, to make that union back again with the Supreme, and that's where the real pleasure.
So that's where the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya means awakening.
Yeah, conscious.
Conscious.
Life force means life force, yeah, the consciousness, the life force. So he's the embodiment of the life force. The Supreme Being is the source of all life, of all energy. He's the source of all energy, the life force, yeah. And we're part of that. We're part of him. So we also have life force.
It's a discovery. It's not an invention.
What's that?
It's a discovery, not an invention.
What do you mean, discovery?
Discovery is already in us. We have to discover it.
Oh, true. Yeah. Correct.
It's not a new.
Yeah.
It's already in there.
Yeah,
only the thing is discovered.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. This Krishna consciousness is not something coming from outside. It's already within us. It just has to be reawakened. Like the seed is in the ground. In the right conditions, if you get the water, the sunlight, it sprouts. So it's like that. The seed of bhakti, the seed of a loving relationship with the Supreme.
If seed has to be one with the nature, if the seed says, I don't want to leave my outer shell, he will never sprout. Outer shell is like a ignorance and all these things there, or anger and all.
Yeah.
If you don't leave that, you won't sprout.
Yeah, that means the right conditions are not there.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as as long as we falsely have a hope that we can be happy in this world, and we think there's not suffering in the material, this material is a good place. As long as that attitude is there, then that means the seed will not sprout.
Not sprout, yeah. And then eventually that nature will finish that, destroy the seed. You will die.
No, well, in this case, we're eternal. So, I mean, and that relationship with the Supreme is also eternal. But it means
body will die.
Body will die, of course. But as long as we keep that rebellious attitude and we don't want to reconnect with the Supreme, unless and until that changes, we're going to have to keep coming back. But that seed will always be there. That's the good news. It's an eternal seed. It's not like a seed that has an expiry date.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. But then why prolong it? Why come back 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times?
So disease and death anyway, yeah.
Abhay,
Yeah.
Now you can't go.
Sorry, mate, can you just go back a little bit? I just heard the seed will not sprout. Can you just, sorry, I missed what that was about.
You get that a chili seed from bunning,
Yeah.
and then you have to put it in the ground. If it doesn't sprout, that means the seed and the environment and the rain and was not there.
Hey, come on, jokers can't go back, get liberated either. You have to be serious if you want to get liberated. Okay. No, what we were talking about is that every soul has a dormant relationship with the Supreme Being.
Right.
That's just like a seed in the ground. It just needs the right conditions, like water and sunlight, and it'll sprout. So also that relationship with the Supreme, it's already there. We just needs the right conditions, and it will grow. That relationship will awaken.
Okay, I've got it. Yeah. I understand now. I just missed the first little bit. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So that's compared to a seed, our relationship with the Supreme. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and essentially in this verse, why is it saying that the sense gratification process, the sense objects, is a source of misery? Essentially because Adi Antavanta. This is the main problem with material life from the top planet to the bottom. Adi Antavanta. Adi means, Josh? Adi?
Adi means the first one.
Yeah, the first or the beginning in this context. And Anta.
Anta means, Anta is the end. It's the snakes, the serpent.
The end, yeah. That's the intrinsic problem with the material world right there, is everything has a beginning and an end. And that is the bummer, the main bummer for the soul. Because do we want that? Do we want it to have a beginning and an end? Of course, anything that has a beginning must have an end. And we know that, right? That everything materially, everything has a beginning. Therefore, logically, it must have an end. But that's problematic right there, because we don't want our life to come to an end. We don't want our house to come to an end. We don't want our job to come down to an end. We don't want our relationship with our partner to come to an end. We don't want our kids to come to an end. We don't want our parents to come to an end. We don't want our money to come to an end. We don't want, all these things, It goes on and on and on. But sorry to go over and over, but just to get into our head that everything in the material, like Krishna said, is temporary. It has a beginning and an end. As soon as you go after that, you're going after suffering, because you're lining yourself up for a relationship. You're putting your heart into a material object that's going to come to an end. It's going to get cut off. It's going to get cut off. And that's the intrinsic, unescapable problem with any relationship in the material world, that it has a beginning and an end. And that for an intelligent yogi,
Gotta go, lads. Thank you.
Oh, you got to go. Oh.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thanks for joining in. Thanks, Josh.
Hare Krishna.
So that is for an intelligent yogi. For an intelligent yogi, that is what they realize. Why am I investing my heart only into relationships with material things that have a beginning and end? Let me invest my heart into relationships that don't have a beginning and don't have an end. And what's that? Of course, materialists, they don't have any idea about that. They don't see there's any other option. They just accept that's the only option. That's the best I can do, is that I can have a temporary job and a temporary family and a temporary health and temporary this and temporary that. But actually there is another option. We can have eternal relationships. We can have an eternal body. We can have an eternal body that doesn't grow old, doesn't get sick, doesn't die. We can have relationships with other eternal bodies. They don't grow old, they don't get sick, they don't die. We can have an eternal house. Doesn't that sound cool? And the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma says, Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpa vriksha laksavate susurabhira vivaliyantam Lakshmi sahasrasara sambrahma sevyamanam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Even it sounds good, but if you know what it means, it even sounds better. Because that's saying in the spiritual world, the houses are made of jewels. And they last forever. And you're never going to get evicted. You're never going to get kicked out by the landlord. You can live there eternally. And it said the trees are desire trees. They fulfill all desires, kalpavrikshas. And the cows are called sarabis. And they can supply unlimited quantities of milk. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a real milk fan. I love my paneer and yogurt and.
I don't think so. Any Krishna devotee is vegan. I don't think so. You know, if it's a vegan, it's not Krishna devotee. Simple as.
Well, for health, they might be, but that's an austerity.
Yeah, if they're lactose intolerant, yeah.
Yeah, tapasya. That's an austerity. But yeah, it's so amazing environment, the spiritual world. Everything's eternal there. It's said in the spiritual world, every step is a dance. What does that mean? When do you dance? When you're unhappy?
You're happy, yeah? You're in ecstasy.
So if they say in the spiritual world, every step is a dance, what does that mean?
You're in ecstasy.
You're always so happy. Imagine you're just dancing everywhere. You see Bob just dancing down the road.
That's why whenever I see Bob, I dance.
So happy.
And I keep asking Bob, can you dance?
I can dance, don't you worry.
Okay, you can show me on Saturday.
Pardon me 1 second.
Not the Ramba and salsa.
So it'll be just skipping and dancing everywhere, dancing.
Right. And then Krishna says that it's Adi is from me and Ant is to me. It's start, beginning and end to the Krishna, isn't it?
True. Yes. So we understand that Krishna is the source of everything.
Yeah.
All beginnings come from Krishna and the end also.
That's the Krishna consciousness. That's all.
Yeah. But our real home and our real environment to live in is in an environment where there is no beginning and end, and that is in Krishna's place, Krishna's personal home in Goloka Vrindavan, where everyone lives eternally, happily dancing, and said every word is a song. Doesn't it? You also, when do you sing? When you're unhappy?
No, only when you're happy.
You sing when you're happy. So they're so happy there. They're always dancing everywhere, singing everywhere. And every tree is a desire tree that fulfills all desires. And in the spiritual world, if you approach a banana tree and say, I want mangoes, it'll immediately supply mangoes. Or I want grapes, it'll give grapes. Or my favorite is sitafal, custard apple. It'll immediately, custard apple will come as many as you want. And no skin and no seed.
How lucky the tree will be there when in a Vrindavan, the trees in Vrindavan, they'll be the luckiest tree.
Yeah.
You know, they're in Vrindavan.
Yes.
And they're on the same soil where the Krishna put his feet there.
Yeah.
How lucky is that?
Yeah. So this is the beginning of our spiritual realization. We have to realize this. We have to have a fundamental disgust with materialistic life, that this life of trying to enjoy with the body, sense gratification with the sense objects, it leads to suffering, and it's just all temporary, and just leads to so much heartache and heartbreak. You know, why do I want to do that? I have to detach myself from that. So then the idea is that when we realize this nature of the material world is so temporary and full of suffering, that we'll become detached from the material world. And then from being detached from the material world, what will we do?
We can attach to the spiritual world.
Yes.
Detach, then we attach.
Every other spiritual path, basically except for this path, is going to tell you about being detached from the material world. Like Buddhism is all about being detached from the material world. They're going to tell you exactly everything I've said about being detached, you know, beginning and an end and the source of misery, everything, the Buddhists will tell you exactly the same thing. And, you know, the Mayavadis and impersonalists, they're going to tell you exactly the same, be detached from the material world. But what you're not going to hear from them, that's where their story finishes, is you should be detached from the material because it's full of suffering. But where their story finishes, our story continues. And that we want to detach from the material so that we can transfer and become attached to our spiritual life.
But I think the human nature is to be attached. Once you're detached, you will be attached something. You know, if you give up your coffee, you will have a tea. You'll like, you know, something like, you know, there's a human nature. So once you detach, you will be attached something, and then attached with the spiritual.
Yeah, but that's not just human nature. That's the soul's nature, and that's in every species.
Yeah, every species. If you detach something, you can attach something else.
You know, like I've got this dog. He's just come to me, but he's become so attached. You know, so but that's natural. That's because there's a soul there within the dog.
Yeah.
And you know, so whatever the species are, there's attachment there, and that's very natural. You know, and the first day we took him away from his family, his mother and brothers and sisters, and he came to us. He cried.
Of course.
In the night. Why was that? Because he was attached to his family. So that's natural to be attached. But that attachment, as we're saying, leads to suffering. That attachment, material attachment, leads to suffering. So the idea is to transfer that attachment. We should become attached spiritually. Don't be materially attached. Materially should be detached and spiritually attached. But if you don't have knowledge about spiritual life, what are you going to be attached to? Like if I say, become attached to God. But what's the problem with that? People don't know who God is.
How are you going to attach it? You need a link.
Okay. You know, say, oh, you know, I love God. Okay, and then you ask him, who's God? Oh, I don't know. Or what's his name? I don't know. Where does he live? I don't know.
Do you know what he look like?
What is it? I don't know. Who are his friends? I don't know. What does he eat? I don't know. Well,
even if you
be attached.
Even if you don't know what it look like, you don't even notice if it's in front of you because you don't know what it look like.
Like if someone said oh, I love my wife, and then the person asks, what's her name? I don't know. What does she look like? I don't know. Where does she live? I don't know. Then what does that mean? Has no meaning. You can't love someone unless you know them. Prabhupada, I was just listening to Prabhupada say today, religion means to know God and to love God. And how can you love God if you don't know God? And therefore, Prabhupada has spent his blood, time and his blood, and everything, energy, to give us these books and his lectures and everything to help us to know God. So that by knowing God, we're going to become attracted to God. When we know, what are we going to know? How beautiful he is. How famous he is, how strong he is, how wise he is. You know, all these different opulences of God. We're going to understand all these things. He's so beautiful, playing on his flute with a peacock feather in his hair and wearing a yellow dhoti and beautiful flower garlands. And he has a beautiful girlfriend, Radharani, and other beautiful maidens around him. And he lives in a beautiful place with houses made of jewels and cows running around and peacocks everywhere. And so we become attracted the more we know about these things, and that he loves us so much and he never leaves us. Even though we forget him in the material world, he comes with us as the super soul. And you go, wow, you mean even though I don't love him, he still loves me? Wow, that's cool. This guy's a really nice guy. So like this kind of knowledge helps us develop our attraction for Krishna. Help us to love God, that he's so kind and so compassionate and so forgiving and so tolerant and so humble. Like that, the more we hear about God, that we become attracted to him. You know, and then he lifts the Govardhan hill to protect his devotees, and he dances in the Rasa Leela with the gopis, and he saves all the Vrindavan residents from the poisonous snake.
Till today, he danced in the Nidhivan.
Yes.
No one can go there.
Yes.
If you go, you may be paralyzed or blind or whatever. It's still there.
Very confident.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
and
right.
He steals butter and yogurt and feeds it to the monkeys, and it's just so cool. He's a really cool guy, and like that. So in that way, the more we know, the more we hear about God, we become attracted to God. But the problem is, if you look in any other religion, Christian or Muslim or whatever, even Hindus, they have very less knowledge about God. So how are they going to get detached from the material world? Because if you can't get attached to the spiritual, how are you going to let go of the material? That's not possible. So, and how are you going to get attached spiritually if you don't have knowledge? If you're still in ignorance, spiritually in ignorance.
No other culture, they're having a relationship with the God where the Krishna consciousness, we can have a friend as a Sakha Bhav.
Yes.
No other religion they allow. You can be like some ladies, they have got a Laddu Gopal, like a son, a baby. Yeah. So no other religion has got this kind of relationship with the God.
So much knowledge, so much knowledge. So deep knowledge. So this verse is stating the facts. The material life is temporary and full of miseries, and we should become detached from the material world. But then, of course, we have to reattach to our spiritual life. So let's read the purport. Bob, do you want to? We're running out of time, but it's a short purport. Yeah. So let's read that. Bob, do you want to have a read of that one?
Is this on 22, isn't it, now?
Yes.
An intelligent person does not take part in the sources
Purport.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. Knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures, how can a liberated soul agree to enjoy false pleasure? In the Padma Purana, it is said.
And read that.
The mystics.
Okay. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama.
So therefore you have it. When we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Rama means pleasure. So when you're chanting Hare Rama, what are you connecting with? You're connecting with the source of all pleasure. Isn't that wonderful? You're connecting with the reservoir, unlimited reservoir of all bliss and pleasure. So that's why we want to keep chanting what?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Then we're going to connect with the real pleasure.
So bottom of the story is, Bob, this money you got in your account is all material. Please transfer into my account and you will get liberated, guarantee.
He hasn't understood the conclusion of the lecture.
Now, do you want me to go on with this?
He wants to transfer Bob's misery to his misery.
That's
it. Okay, you continue.
Yeah. My dear sons, there is no reason to labour very hard for sense pleasure while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the stool eaters, which is the hogs. Rather, you should undergo penance in this life by which our existence will be purified, and as a result you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted to sense pleasures, which are the cause of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasure, the more he is entrapped by material miseries.
There you have it. So this one, my dear sons, that's an incarnation of God named Rishabdev. Rishabdev spoke that to his 100 sons, headed by Bharat, who this planet Earth is named after his eldest son, Bharat Maharaj. So he's saying there that there's no need to work hard for sense gratification because it just comes automatically. Even like, and he's mentioned in the example, like the hogs, the pigs, It's just available. Food is available. Sex is available. Sleep is available. All the pleasures are available. You don't have to make that the goal of your life, the aim of your life, to enjoy the senses. Automatically, whatever your senses need will automatically be provided, you know, due to your past karma or whatever you're destined to get. Whatever money is destined to come to you, and whatever house is destined for you to live in, and whatever partner is destined for you to have, or kids or whatever, that you'll get automatically. You don't have to run after these things. We should focus on our real mission of life, and that's to get the transcendental bliss, the eternal happiness. That doesn't come automatically. You see, food and sex and shelter, all these things, protection, come automatically according to your karma. But getting transcendental bliss doesn't come automatically. You have to do some austerities to get it. So what austerities do we have to do to get transcendental bliss now in Kali Yuga? Previously, they had to go to the forest and perform severe austerities, fasting, stand on their tippy toes, hands in the air, and do all kind of funny things, control their breathing and fasting and so many things. But that's not recommended in Kali Yuga. What austerity is recommended in Kali Yuga?
Not eating meat.
Yep, to give up the sinful
no illicit
activities
sex.
Like Yep.
No gambling.
Yep.
And help me out here, Gulshan.
Was it
no gambling? No
intoxication? Did you say intoxication?
And no, that's what I was going to say. I couldn't remember what toxin and alcohol.
No intoxication means, Bob, there is no tea, coffee as well. You know that?
But that's a minor one, but still that's included. Yep. But we're going to start somewhere. Start with the major things first.
Listen, I have to go. I'm sorry.
No, you can't.
All right. So look, thank you so much
Thank
again.
you. Is that Saturday coming?
But just one final thing.
Yeah.
But one, not just avoiding those four things. The main austerity also we have to do. We must chant Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Must chant Hare Krishna.
16 round is the minimum.
Yeah, start, like I said, start somewhere. 1 round, 2 round, 4 round, 8 rounds. Build up, but we want to aim towards that. But somehow or other we have to chant, and that will bring us to the point of transcendental bliss. So on that note, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'll see you on Saturday and
Saturday,
I'll see
Bob.
you next Thursday, Abhay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.